These are the Redback boots. They are a super requested boot after doing the Blundstone boots because a lot of people consider them to be more comfortable, longer lasting, and a true Australian boot because they're made in Australia, unlike the Blundstones. Let's cut some in half and see if there's any truth behind that. I bought the pair to cut in half and I wore them around for a couple days and they were so freaking comfy. I bought a pair for me to wear personally. So spoiler alert, they are way comfy and I like them a lot. And we're also closing in on 100,000 subscribers. We'll probably be there maybe by the end of March. I've been wanting to do something for 100,000 subscribers and I've been asking what you guys want to do. And I've been going through the comment sections and the most requested and probably the most ridiculous thing that's been requested is the shattered backboard Jordans. So we're gonna cut a pair of those in half. Those babies are like $1,000. So it's fitting for 100,000 subscribers. And we're gonna start the Red Wing series. So all of you guys that have been hounding me about the Red Wings, we're finally getting to them. They're just pricey and I've been putting it off. So we'll finally start that. And I also wanna do a Toasty Gang shirt. So if you're an artist and you have a cool style, hit me up on Instagram at rose_anvil from your artist page so I can kind of check out your style. And I'll choose a few artists and maybe have them do a mock-up. And at that 100,000 subscriber mark video with the shattered backboards, I'll put them up on the screen and have everyone vote. And we'll choose one and make some shirts. Yeah, look forward to that. And if you haven't subscribed, consider subscribing because I really need your support on these because these boots are super pricey and it's hard to make money on YouTube, contrary to popular belief. So let's get to the Redbacks. We're gonna talk about four main things with these boots. We're gonna just go over the boot information, we're gonna go over the fit, the leather, and then the soles. And then we'll cut them in half. So these are the Great Barrier boots in the, what is it? Puma brown. I was gonna say Dookie brown, but Puma brown. Puma brown leather. They range anywhere from about $145 to $175, depending on which leather and which style you get. They've got a couple different styles. The ones we're cutting in half are similar to the Blundstones, where it's a big wrapped around piece of leather. They've also got styles like the pair of boots that I bought that have just a slightly different leather style. And they're made in Australia. That's one of the biggest complaints I hear about the Blundstones is they used to be made in Australia. They're not anymore. Well, Redbacks are a huge favorite in Australia, according to my comment sections, because they're still made in Australia. Now let's talk about the fit and my initial impression of these boots. So I wore these for a few days and I really liked them, so I ordered my own pair. I've worn these for about 2 weeks and these babies are so comfy. The only thing that wasn't initially comfortable right off the bat was the arch. These have a high arch and it's something that Redback talks about in their marketing is a lot of arch support. It made my arch a little bit sore the first couple days, but nothing too bad. So if you got flat feet, these will probably make your foot a little sore until they're fully broken in. The leather was really soft, it really wasn't too hard to break in. The toe box is a pretty wide toe box, especially compared to the Blundstones. The Blundstones squished my feet just a little bit, not really too bad, but these are a little bit wider and the toe box is a little bit taller. And as for the styling between the two, the Blundstones are a little bit more subtle style. The lugs on the soles aren't as defined versus the Redbacks have a lot more of a heavy lug and they're a little bit wider and a little bit taller in the toe box, so they don't look as slim and sleek. Where I work so much, I don't mind a work-ish looking boot, but some people might be turned off by how heavy the lugs of these soles are. So I guess we'll kind of see in the long run how comfortable these are like a year from now. But initial impression, these are the most comfortable boots I've worn so far. So shout out to Redback for making super comfy boots. Now let's talk about the leather. So the first thing I noticed right off the bat when I got these boots was how thick the leather is. It's the thickest leather on any of the boots that we reviewed so far. It's right around 3 millimeters compared to the Blundstones were right around 2 millimeters, a little under 2 millimeters. So it's literally 50% thicker leather than the Blundstones. And you wouldn't know it wearing them. Like it's a pretty soft and supple leather, so there really isn't a whole lot of break-in period with this leather. All of the leathers that Redback offers are full grain leather, and these ones on the Great Barriers, it's an oil tanned leather, which is really just a chrome tan leather that's been re-tanned with a lot of oils to make it really soft and supple. And it kind of has a oily-ish feel to it. And it's just a better leather all around than the Blundstones. The Blundstones is a really dry and kind of foamy leather, and you know the 500s have bluing on the inside versus these, you know, it's going to last a long time. It's a really thick leather It's a durable leather and it's a pretty decent quality leather. You can see the grain on the top layer of the leather. So not the best leather in the world, but it's a pretty decent leather for the price. Now to the soles of these boots. So obviously these are a cemented sole, so they're not gonna be as easy to resole. Sometimes I say they can't be resoled and everyone's like, actually they can be resoled. So technically they can be resoled, but they're not as easy as a Goodyear welted boot. And they're a very similar construction and materials as the Blundstones because they've got a polyurethane midsole and a TPU thermopolyurethane outsole. So I'm curious if these have the same problem as the Blundstones, where if you let them sit for too long in your closet, they start to crumble. So if you own a pair of these, have you ever had an issue with that where you let them sit too long and hydrolysis happens and they start to crumble? Let me know. These are a little bit more of an aggressive sole pattern than the Blundstones, so they're gonna grip a little bit better in dirt. They have a clear TPU on the bottom, which I think I'd rather have a solid color, but this, it's not too bad. And then the feel of the midsole it's a really squishy foam compared to the Blundstone. So I'm wondering if that is why they're more comfortable. I guess we'll see when we cut them in half if it's more squishy all the way through or if it's just like a layer on the outside. So speaking of cutting them in half, let's cut them in half. Okay, we got it cut in half. Let's see what's inside. Holy cow, that is a lot of foam. Let's see how much foam there is in the heel, because that is substantial. No wonder they're so freaking comfy. So 1.25 inches of just straight PU foam. When I was cutting through, I didn't feel a shank in there. So that's kind of surprising. You'd think for a work boot that there would be a shank in it. These aren't the steel-toed version, so maybe the steel-toe boots have a shank. Maybe these don't need a shank as much because there's really not much of a heel. It's probably only 1/4 inch worth of a heel on there. So you might not need that extra support of the shank if there's no heel for that gap to drop to the ground, kind of like we talked about in the shank video. And it's got a really high arch, so maybe that's part of why. I don't know, what do you guys think? Let me know if you think this needs a shank. You can definitely see there's a little bump where the extra arch support is. So I'll reach out to Redback and kind of get their opinion on this. If there's a bigger gap right here between the heel and the pad of the foot, I would say that it needs a shank, but there's still like 1 inch of foam in that gap area compared to the Blundstones where it has a shank. It's only got 3/8 inch of foam. The pad of the foot has similar thickness of foam compared to the Blundstones, but the heel and the arch area has way more foam on these. And that's why these babies are so comfy, is because you're basically walking on almost 2 inches of foam with the insert in there. Also, this foam feels a lot softer, so I went and grabbed my durometer tester to see what the difference between the two are, or is. Redback registers at about 2. Blundstone is about 4. So that's another reason why these are so freaking comfy. I can't imagine there being a more comfortable pair of boots. This is crazy. That's so much foam. And it's so soft. it makes me wonder how long they last. And then the TPU outsole, so I thought this was gonna be a little bit thicker. So it's only about 4 millimeters thick. Sorry, I switched between standard and metric, but so about the same thickness as the Blundstones. I wonder if this wears out faster because it feels like it's a softer TPU compared to the Blundstones. There's a different material underneath of this that we're gonna have to look at once we get this insole torn apart, because it's not just a solid layer of like a fiberboard like the Blundstones. Let's get the rest of it torn apart and see what else is inside and maybe see what this extra layer is and go from there. Got the rest of it torn apart, really no surprises on the inside. I thought there might have been a different layer underneath the insole, but it was just the glue. So fiberboard insole, really nothing else to it. One thing I did like is the counter is a similar like fiberboard. It's got a little bit more flex in it compared to the Blundstones. But what I really liked more about the Redbacks compared to the Blundstones is that the counter sits behind the main layer of leather, and then the leather on the outside is what encapsulates the counter. Versus the Blundstones, the counter is just sewn in to the inside of the boot, and that's sewn to the main layer of leather on the outside. So I like this a little bit more because you've got that flesh side of the leather that's gonna help prevent heel slip. Kind of a minor thing, but still worth mentioning. Yeah, pretty basic. When it comes down to it, is it a better boot than Blundstone? I would say it's a significantly better boot than Blundstone. Much better leather, way more PU in midsole, so it's gonna be significantly more comfortable. You've got 1.5 inches of foam in there, and more importantly, they're cheaper than Blundstones. You know, you're saving potentially $50 if you buy one of the cheaper versions of these boots. I like these a lot. I'm a big fan. These might be the most comfortable boots in the world. Is there a more comfortable boot? Name a more comfortable boot. And I'll cut it in half because I can't imagine it getting more comfortable than this. Let me know what your experiences are with Redback and Blundstone. If you've worn both of them, if you've worn one, you know, what do you think about them? Because the best thing about these videos is my comment sections are so kind and like informative. There's so many comment sections out there that are just like vile and toxic and everyone's so rude to each other. But in my comment section, everyone's so nice, and there's a lot of information to be gleaned from the comment section. So thanks for all that, and that pretty much wraps it up. We're on our way to 100,000. Shattered backboards and Red Wings and Toasty Gang shirts on the way. Consider liking and subscribing and commenting so we can get to that 100,000. And thanks for all your support. See ya.